Okay, there we go. Thanks so much for joining us again. We're really excited to share the data with you. So this is our second webinar of the Home Waste Audit, which is a collaborative science project hosted by us, the U of T trash team, and fueled by our community, which is literally all of you. So over the last few weeks, we took a deep dive together into our waste bins. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into our data, which is our favorite part. Before we do, we have a few housekeeping things as well as some review to put all of our hard work back into context. So first, we want to get to know each other a bit and then acknowledge the land upon which we do our local work. This time, instead of 2 hosts, you have 3 hosts. So I'll be your MC, and I'll also talk about the diversity of our waste streams. Rafaela will talk about the data from the surveys you've been taking in Google Forms, and Hannah will share the data about our waste. So quick introduction to me. My name is Chelsea Rockman. I'm one of the co-founders of the U of T trash team, and I'm a researcher of microplastics. I've been working on this issue for quite some time, almost more than a decade, which is crazy, feeling old. And today I'll also, actually I already shared with you what I'm going to do today. So I'm going to pass it on to Rafaela to introduce herself.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Rafaela. I'm also one of the co-founders of the U of T trash team. I'm a social science, and I have been working on social impacts of waste for more than a decade. And today I will share some of the survey results with you all. And I'm very excited about that. And Hannah?
Hi everyone, I'm Hannah. I am staff at the U of T trash team and I coordinate the International Trash Truck Network, which is one of our projects. And I was the person who looked through all of your data when you sent it in over the last 4 weeks. So I've got lots of interesting things to show you and hope you enjoy seeing all the results.
Okay. And then just a little bit of an introduction to us. Our mission and values are built around increasing waste literacy while connecting with people, having fun, and taking action. We take a positive approach to the work that we do, and we are rooted in science and evidence-based solutions. Ultimately, we use education, public outreach, and scientific research to deliver evidence-based solutions to decrease solid waste and promote a more circular economy. And finally, before we begin, it's important to recognize the history of the land that we call home. We are thrilled to have people joining us from all over the world, and we extend our acknowledgements to the Indigenous and traditional past across all territories. For our team, we will speak to the land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit River. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are very grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land and hopefully soon to be able to work with them. Before we show you the data, we wanted to give you all a really quick reminder of why we are here. The objectives of this waste audit were, 1, to learn about the waste stream in the municipality or the city on which you live, which literally means learn what bins you have, meaning recycling, landfill, and organics, and what goes into each of them. And 2, we asked you to decrease your waste footprint and divert waste away from your landfill bin by procuring and using products that you can reuse or that go into other bins, meaning recycling, for example. So the objectives of the webinar tonight are to show you the differences in waste management across the different places in which the people on this call and those who took part in this waste audit live. We want to share the survey results about waste behaviors and waste literacy, and we want to share the results showing our self-reported waste habits over the last 4 weeks. This webinar is a little bit more interactive, so we wanted to quickly go over how to ask a question and also how to share your thoughts with us. So if you want to ask a question, you can either ask it out loud or you're more than welcome to write it in the chat. If you do want to ask something out loud, please raise your hand using the raise hand function when we're in the middle of a Q&A. You can get to it by clicking on participants. When it's your turn, we'll say your name out loud and then take you off mute so you can ask your question. And please feel free to ask us questions throughout on anything we've covered. And if you ask questions during the webinar, that's also totally fine. We sort of compile them and we get to the end, we go back towards them. So you're more than welcome to answer questions as you have, or sorry, ask questions as you have them, or wait till the end. Okay. So for a bit of review, it's important to put the work that we do in context. The last time we met, we told you about the plastic pollution problem. So just to remind you, up to 32 million tons of plastic waste enters the world's oceans, rivers, and lakes every year. And this could increase to 53 million tons by 2030 if we continue business as usual. On a personal scale, today we're talking about how we can not continue business as usual. The fun thing is, on a global scale right now at the United Nations, they are negotiating our first ever international treaty on plastic pollution. So hopefully that 53 million tons is nowhere in the future. Plastic does not decompose, it degrades, and it persists and accumulates in the environment. So it breaks down into smaller and smaller pieces, and it stays there for quite a bit of time. So we want to avoid that. And that plastic pollution in the environment threatens wildlife by entanglement, by ingestion, and through some of the chemicals that leach from the plastics into nature. And we shared with you the different ways we think there are to solve it. And this audit focused on the first two, which is to reduce consumption and waste management. So within these are diverse ways to reduce our consumption and waste. First, we can reduce the materials we use by reducing consumption and reusing. Second, when we use materials that are destined to become waste, because sometimes they just are, we can choose ones that fall into more sustainable waste management, meaning not the landfill, but sent to recycling or compost instead, and ideally keeping it in a circular economy or a circular system. To do this, we think it's incredibly important to understand the waste management system upon which you live. And this we do for two reasons. One is to increase your waste literacy if you didn't know before. So you actually did this through the second survey. So hopefully you learned something new, but some of you might have already been waste management experts in the city in which you live. And two, we really wanted to be able to show the combined diversity of our waste streams, demonstrating why it's so important to learn about the waste in your own city. Sometimes even if you move 20 minutes away, what goes in your bin changes. So in a minute, you're going to see how harmonized our waste streams are between regions. And when they vary by so much, it can lead to some confusion. So before we share what we found, I was curious, I was hoping that somebody could either raise their hand or type in the chat to be able to share why knowing about your waste management might help you reduce the waste you send to landfill. So the question is, why is it important to have this waste literacy, to understand what goes in your bin? How does that actually help you reduce the waste you send to landfill? Can anyone share ideas? And if you are raising your hand, it is true that Zoom has changed and updated since our last webinar. And now if you want to raise your hand, I believe it's in the reactions part on the bottom of your screen. So anyone want to share any ideas out loud or in the text of why it matters to know? Here we go. Here comes some answers. So Mike says, I find that there's a lot of misinformation, misunderstanding about what goes where, and increased literacy can reduce that. Yeah, that's right. So you can put the right things in the right bins. And Jane says, you know, what actually goes to recycling and what goes to landfill. Yeah, and I find that knowing means I can make different decisions at the grocery store. So maybe I'll avoid a yogurt that's in a black tub and go for one that's in a different color tub so that I can, for example, put it in my recycle bin instead of the landfill. And yes, Elise, it absolutely prevents wish cycling and contamination of recycling. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Okay, so let's see where people were when we did this audit. So this audit actually, this was sort of on purpose because we really tried to get a lot of our own trash team volunteers to be part of this particular audit. So you'll notice we don't span a ton of locations, but we do still have quite a diversity of waste management. But in this case, this time, we still had people that were joining from 3 countries, China, the United States, and Canada. Within Canada, people were pretty near the GTA. So in Toronto, Mississauga, Vaughan, Collingwood, and LaSalle. I might be saying wrong. Within the United States, people were from Narragansett, which is in the state of Rhode Island. And within China, we had 1 person from Beijing. So we span 3 countries and 7 cities, and we had 23 people providing data for the waste management survey, which is pretty good because we are not asking you to do a little bit of work. We are asking you to do 4+ weeks of work. So thank you. So at first glance, as I said, some of these locations, most of these locations are not that far apart from each other, but let's see how different their waste management can be. So the first question you got asked is how many people have recycling bin that's curbside in your area, how many have general or landfill waste, how many have organic waste, and how many have other or don't know. So we were really pleasantly surprised to see that everybody had recycling curbside. For organic, there were only 2 participants that didn't have it, and that not everybody has a green bin. When I lived in the United States, we didn't have one in Davis, California, nor in other cities. I lived in California or Arizona. But if you do live in a condo or apartment building, it's possible you have one and you just don't know it. So sometimes you just have to ask the building and see whether there is a location for green waste. We had 4 people that had other, and this actually tended to be yard collection or big items. We actually have yard collection where I live at home, so that can be common in some areas around Toronto. And then we had 1 person who wasn't sure. And so I don't know if that's because they weren't able to find the waste management information online, which is interesting. So I'd actually love to hear more about that one if somebody's, if that person happens to be on it, are willing to share, because sometimes that information may be difficult to find. Okay. And then the other thing we asked is, how does your city provide guidance on how to separate the recycling waste? So if you could find these answers, how was this guidance? Was it by product? So in Toronto, they show you kind of a calendar of products and it tells you which bin they go in. Is it by plastic type? This is how it was when I lived in California. I give you the symbols. Number 1 is polyethylene, number 2 is polypropylene, etc. And again, we had a person who didn't know, and that may be a city that doesn't make it easy to find. But by and large, it was mostly product type. And I think, again, this is because it's areas around the GTA and Ontario where this is quite common. And I would be willing to guess that it is Rhode Island where it is by material type, but that's me making a hypothesis based on where I've lived in the past, and I don't know. But what's fascinating is that when you break it up by product type, you might have this idea that in every city, if you can recycle one thing, you can recycle another. But it's actually not the case. So in 2 out of 23 areas, you could recycle black plastic. In 16 out of 23 areas, you could recycle plastic bags. In 14 out of 23, styrofoam cups or styrofoam in general. In 2 out of 23, straws. And 12 out of 23, cutlery, which is surprising. So black plastic, this is quite common that you can't recycle it. And that's because when a city uses a laser to tell what type of plastic it is, the laser, the black is absorbs the laser and it can't tell the type of plastic. And so it doesn't know where to send it. For bags and styrofoam, they usually have to have a market for it. And if they have a market for it, they'll take it. These are usually left out because they're too small, hard to capture, hard to recycle. But some cities, it seems like it was okay. So in any case, waste harmonization, not so much, even when people live close by. For those of you in Ontario, this is going to change. So in the next few years, we're going to see it all harmonized across the province. Okay, and then I think that's it for me. I'm going to pass it over to Rafaela to share the results from the other surveys.
Thanks, Chels. So over the next slides, I would like to share some results from the surveys you all replied. So the first thing that I would like to share, you can move to the next one. Yes, please. Thank you. One of the questions focus on whether you learned something new, reading about your local waste streams and take the surveys. And I'm very happy to report that 87% of the participants learned something new during this time, during this 4-week period. And I would love to share with you all some of the comments. So, some participants learned about their waste stream, where the different items go, and the information provided by the city, like the waste wizard. And then something that one participant said, something that I think I couldn't go to recycle actually goes there. And then another said that my county has a waste wizard that is super easy to use. You can also suggest new items if they aren't listed there. So yeah, waste wizard was something that people share a lot. And then some participants from Toronto learned that the city does not have facilities to treat compostable plastic, and these are sent to landfill. Yes, that's the case here, Toronto. And then another group of participants said in terms of products, sanitary napkins was a common new learning for participants. So one participant said, I learned that paper towel, napkins, diapers, and feminine hygiene products can be placed in the green bin. Another popular product was the bread bag. A lot of participants said about the bread bag. Some participants learned that bread bags could actually go in the recycling bin. And then wood chopstick was also a product that surprised some of the participants. One participant shared with us wooden chopsticks are not organic and used to do it in Vancouver. So that's why it's super important to always check your local waste stream, because as Chelsea mentioned, you can go like 100 kilometers far from your city or even closer, and the waste streams are different. So you always need to check. And even in your city, you have to check if something actually changed or not. So another result I want to share here, it's how many different changes all of you made throughout the waste audit. And it's really amazing, congrats. And because the list is really quite long, I will highlight only some of them. We have from change from look at the information on how to dispose your waste properly, to learn how to make your own cleaning or personal care products, or read Rachel Salt's book. We have a fan, that's super cool. So let's have a closer look at the top 4 response. Can you move to, yes, thank you. So for the top 4 changes made throughout the home waste audit, 15 out of 16 participants looked for information on how to dispose your waste properly. Then 14 of 15 throw items into the recycling bin that you previously would have put in the landfill. 10 out of 16 try an alternative product with less packaging. And finally, 7 out of 10 learned how to cook something from scratch instead of buying it in the packaging. So you are also welcome to share in the chat your recipe. If you learn something that's pretty cool that you are not using package now, plastic packaging, please let us know. So maybe we can also try your recipe. And then some of those changes were very easy to do it. Some of them were more difficult. And here, the easiest changes were avoiding single-use plastics, remember which bin to place items in, and reusing, repurposing items. And then here are some of your answers on why they were simple changes. So we had changes related to refuse to plastic to produce waste. So one participant said it was easy to refuse plastic grocery bags and take out utensils once I got into the habit. It's all about the dynamic that if you change your habit, you should start to do something different. Takes a while, but then sometimes you get it, and then you just do automatically. Asking for no single-use cutlery at the restaurants, or buying a product with less packaging or low effort options. And then we have change related to reduce waste. One participant said, once you are conscious of your packaging, it's impossible to unsee it. We are now always trying to reduce waste where possible and think twice before consuming something. And then another said, making more food items, dishes at home rather than buying is still waste from some package, but significantly less than processed versions. And then once another participant said, almost impossible to avoid food packaging altogether, but I have significantly reduced it in some areas, stopping buying products that are more packaged and switch it to a plastic-free and recyclable options when available. And then we have changes related to cost and reuse. So one participant said, I'm trying to keep my costs low in general, which means I avoid takeout, coffee, or buying a lot of snacks that may have plastic in them. Also, for similar reasons, I try to reuse a lot of things that I have both for environmental but also cost-based reason. I'm buying items with less packaging, reusing, repurposing items, and remember which bin to place items in, or I always think that they do, although now they are putting more effort into them. So that's quite interesting. And then another change are related to knowing your waste streams and the materials that you are consuming. So being aware of the materials and their recyclability making choice easier. And then because Waste Wizard app is so easy to use. And then another participant said, because I can make the change all by myself. And that means it's easier when you are living alone, or you are you don't need to count with other people to make the change. So I have a question for all of you, and you can type in the chat. How was the process to involve another household member in the home waste audit? Was it difficult? Was it easy? What strategy did you use it? I'm curious to know. You can type in the chat if you have an idea. That's something that appears in almost every home waste audit. The challenge of when you are living, especially when you have a roommate, it's harder to change behaviors or with other people. So if you have any idea how, if you want to share something that how you did that, that would be nice. The house, we just file everything on the counter for me to record. And was it easy to convince another person, Kim Smith, to participate in the home waste audit as well, and try to make the change, not only counting the waste, but make some changes altogether? No strategy, but getting my tenants to change their behavior was somewhat difficult and took a few reminders. Yes. We have a stick note about waste arrangement beside the entrance door. Oh, that's a very good idea. Easy as he does what I tell him. Yes, okay, good for you. The change their behavior somehow and took a few reminders. Okay, just for out of curiosity, before we move to next slide, Mike, how did you somewhat difficult, and you said that change behavior was somewhat was difficult, took a few reminders. What types of things do you remind your tenants? Like you just make some notes or use some graphics, or what did you do to make them to start to change behavior? And reminders, okay, that's nice. The last one, 2 members super on board, 1 less enthusiastic. Once we brought out the trash to count and ask them questions, they were more enthusiastic. Okay, it became a weekly ritual. Oh, that's nice, of reviewing our waste together, identify problems, items. That's great. So you are doing as a group and one help each other and encourage each other. That's amazing. Okay, so Chelsea, you can move to next. Thank you. So then we will ask about the most difficult change you made throughout the waste audit. And buy items with no packaging was by far the most difficult one. Avoid single-use plastics and buy items with less plastic, with less packaging, were the second and third most difficult changes made. Other difficult changes were also reported, like remember which bin to place items in, buying items, packaging recyclable materials, and reusing, repurposing items. Interesting is that remembering which bin to place items in was also reported by 5 participants as one of the easiest change made. So yeah, we have participants that found this that was difficult, but for others was the easiest one to do it. And here are some of your answers on why was this the most difficult change. And here I would like to highlight that sometimes changes are not easy to make, especially when they don't depend only on us. Many of participants reported that it's difficult to find items with less or no plastic packaging. And this because, among other factors, the regular grocery stores and industry play a big role on deciding the types of packaging that they sell, and of course, the package that we will buy. So then we have participants saying that the supermarket I go to has heavy packaging, and then another say it's difficult to find items that I need or prefer that don't use plastic packaging. For example, I have tried many reduced plastic toothbrushes, but the bristles are too hard on my gum. And then another challenge was to find cost-friendly alternatives to items packaged in plastic. So one participant said, for example, I would like to buy bulk laundry soap instead of drugstores ones, but it's twice as expensive. And so we can find, we saw a couple of participants saying about the cost, and yeah, it is true. So we can find many ways to reduce plastic waste without compromise budget, but it is true that there are many low plastic waste stores and products that are more expensive than regular ones. So we just need to try and keep searching what is the best options and what fits in our pocket and how we can do things without plastic, but without harming our pocket as well. So the other difficult change that our participants they share with us were specifically related to COVID, where plastics are overused and the online shopping increased because of COVID. And then we are almost the end with the survey, but we also asked where you found tips to reduce waste, and the UFT Trash Team and other websites were the most common place for seeking information. And that's super nice that we could help you with this. And if you remember, please, you can share and tap in the chat what website you thought was useful, and so we can share among us, and maybe we can learn something new, or a website that has a lot of good tips that we have never heard about it. So if you remember anyone that you want to share, or doesn't need to be a website, or any social media that you think is interesting for other participants to follow or to learn about it, please, you can type in the chat. Okay, James shared the waste app, TO waste app, that the waste wizard that Mike said yes. Yeah, waste wizard for sure. We are very lucky to have something like this in Toronto. I use this a lot, almost every week. We have something that I'm not sure, and I try to find there. So the Toronto Waste app is a very useful one. So the last information that I would like to share here, it's your favorite waste reduction tip. And we have some favorite tips related with the process-based learning experience of counting item by item. So one participant said, sorting through my trash and recycle one by one actually helped me to compost more, since I was less lazy about putting my tissues in the compost. And then the Waste Wizard app was something that a lot of participants share as a good tip. And then another learning was about their waste stream. Not everything that's labeled compostable, it's compostable by your city. And for example, that glass bottles and jars can be recycled. And then other tips were related to refuse the producing waste. So some participants, they bought a reusable key cup that they can refill with their own coffee grounds. And we also have some participants saying that, I'm not sure if this counts, but simply making coffee at home and cooking bulks at home rather than buying single-use meals, coffee every day. So that's definitely, this helps a lot. Not only save money, but you are producing less waste. And then another thing that I would like to share with you is like one of the participants think more before buying clothes and other things online. They usually wait a day now or two to considering about their delivery. So, and some tips were related to refuse and producing plastics, buying snacks and baking ingredients for bulk barns. Even though they said, even though it's not as convenient as closer grocery stores, but it's worth the trip. So there are a lot of good tips that you share with us, and thank you so much for doing that. We appreciate it. And before I pass over to Hannah, who will present the data from the waste audit, your tally, I would like to open for a quick question. So 94% of the participants who answered the survey would recommend the home waste audit, and we are very happy about that. That means it's worth it. It's worth it being here today discussing about your waste, our waste. So my question is, and I think Susan is sharing the link. Why do you think home waste audit was helpful to you? So we have this question on Mentimeter, and I will share my screen and you can answer there if it's easier. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, here my screen. I don't see any answer so far. So the link is in the chat, and I would like to know, why do you think home waste audit was helpful to you? Made me more conscious about my waste. When I did going through the process, made our house more conscious of how much waste we produce and start to think about reduction strategies. Yes, that also happened to me when we did the first time. I was really shocked by the amount of things that I didn't know that I was producing. And when you see all the mountain of waste, you will start to rethink about your strategies at home. Think twice before throwing, recycling away, keeping parts or reusing. Bring awareness, identify problems, items where we need to switch. I also think the 4-week program helps create a habit of it, more conscious of our waste production, thinking about where waste is going and what would I do. Yeah, it's very nice. Help to better understand what goes to which bin. That's very helpful. Okay, thanks so much for sharing that with me. I think I will pass over to Hannah, and if you we'll have more time for questions and comments at the end. So thank you, Hannah.
Okay, onto the data. So Yeah, Raf has just finished the survey responses, so now I'm going to go through the waste audit data itself, which is all the items that you counted and noted down on your data sheets and you submitted to us. So before I start, I just want to thank you all again for doing this. I know it can take some time, but the results are pretty impressive. So we'll go through them now. Okay, so one of the first questions we asked in the survey, the first survey, was how many items of trash do you estimate your household produces in 1 week? And for this question, most respondents thought that they threw away between 0 to 50 items per week among their household. And then also some that thought they were slightly above this, ranging up to 100 items per week. But very few of you thought that you threw away more than this. And if we compare, on the left is the survey responses, and then on the right is the results from week 1, where we kept business as usual. We can see that in reality, when we combine the results from landfill and recycling together, we can see that most households actually threw away over 101 to 150 items per week, and very few threw away less than those 50 items per week as predicted. So this sort of shows that we might be underestimating our household waste, and you can let me know in the chat if you found this yourself. But it's really easy to see why this could happen, because I found when I did the home waste audit that if you're not keeping track of your waste like we have been for the last few weeks, often you don't realize all those small bits and pieces that you throw away throughout each day. And also, if you have multiple people in the household, then it's difficult to know how much everyone else is throwing away in addition to yourself. So I'm sure that that was a surprise for many of us. Okay, so now we're on to the actual data results. So here are the overall results from the home waste audit. And as you can see, I think you should be very, very happy with these. So the landfill waste results are in black, the recycling is in blue, and the total waste across the 4 weeks is in orange. And the different points in the graph show the average number of waste items among households per week. So across the 4 weeks, we can see that the numbers actually went down for both landfill and recycling waste, which is really great to see. And so on average, the number of landfill items decreased from 71 in week 1 to 51 in week 4. And the recycling waste decreased from 43 items per week in week 1 to 34 items per week in week 4. So on average, waste decreased by sorry, I've lost my numbers here, by about 30 items per week among households, so on average. So this is a really fantastic result, and I think that everyone it shows that everyone made a real effort to reduce their waste that they're both throwing away and what they're putting into landfill as well. So to put this into a broader context, we had 16 different households send in data, and by week 4, in the landfill waste, it was around 20 items less per week. So amongst us per week, that's 300 less items going into landfill. And over the course of 1 year, that's over 16,000 less items going to landfill. And I did double check my maths on this. It sounds crazy, but it's true. So for people trying to make individual changes, I feel like sometimes it can feel like your individual actions don't make a very big difference, but this just shows that they can. So if we think about just our small group that did this, if we could make these changes on a broader scale, say in a whole community or a whole country, the amount of waste going to landfill would decrease drastically. So the collective impact can be huge. And before I dig into the different types of materials in the landfill and recycling waste, I just wanted to comment about the differences between the individuals, because the previous results were averaged among all the participants. And so we can see here, I've anonymized everyone, but we can see how different the data looks when we break it down into average items per individual across the 4 weeks. It's just interesting to see how some households throw away more landfill waste, and some households throw away slightly more recycling, and it just shows that our waste levels and the types of waste that we're throwing away really differ depending on your life, where you live, what you eat, what's available in your local shops to buy, what your job is, your hobbies, if you have children, if you have pets. And there's so many different reasons why our waste can be different. So it's just interesting to see. And that was shown as well when we dig into the different types of items that everyone threw away too. Okay, so you'll remember on the data sheets that we provided to you, we asked you to categorize items as plastic, paper, metal, glass, mixed materials, or other. And so this just shows those categories for the landfill waste. And we can see that the most common item throughout the audit was plastic in landfill waste. And this averaged at around 26 items per week at the start of the challenge, and it dropped to an average of 19 items per week by week 4. The second most common item in landfill was mixed materials. And this is actually really interesting because they're something that is really common in our day-to-day lives. And I think in most of the locations we're in, these can't be recycled because the mixed materials means they can't be separated. But it was good to see that these materials were going into your landfill bins and not your recycling bins. When we look at the other different material types, they were all pretty low. Paper items thrown into landfill were mostly tissues and tissue paper and paper towel. But in total, all participants threw away a grand total of 121 tissues across the 4 weeks, which I thought was quite impressive, even though it was a low number. Okay, so before I go to the next slide, I want to give you the opportunity to have a little guess about what items you think would be the most common in landfill waste. So Chelsea's going to do this for me. So if you click the Mentimeter link in the chat and answer this question. So what was the most common plastic item in landfill waste? What do you think it was? We got chip bag, soft packaging, coffee cup lids, food packaging. These are great guesses. Have Loblaws run out of chips?
There was something to do with, I don't know the story, but it was in blog TO. Loblaws was out of chips.
Oh no.
Some deal with the companies, I think.
Oh, maybe that helped people in the audit.
I think you can still get them at Metro.
The world's not over, it's okay. Okay, plastic bag, dental floss. These are good. These are very good guesses. I think that might have been nearly everyone who was a participant on the call who's had a guess. So we can show you what the result was now. And you were pretty much on the ball with this. So soft plastic packaging was the top item with nearly 250 items thrown away across the 4 weeks. Second to this was hard pouch packaging, which is interesting because it's still kind of, I would say it's still kind of soft packaging, but because of the way it's structured, obviously it can't be recycled in many locations. Food packaging was third. And then we had plastic film, plastic packaging in general, and then plastic bags. So one thing I wanted to, I think soft plastic packaging covers both food packaging and also other packaging of other items that we would buy. But I wanted to talk about the plastic film. So there was over 100 pieces of plastic film thrown away across the 4 weeks. And I was wondering whether people had managed to, if you were using plastic film, if you managed to reduce this, or any ways you can suggest for people to reduce their use of plastic film. Not I have. Yeah. So Kim says she tried to use beeswax wrap or just put leftover food in containers. And I also have made this change and I've not bought plastic film since. I love beeswax wraps. And I think, Rafa, do you make your own beeswax wraps? Have you made your own before?
I tried once. It didn't work very well, but I still have some wax in here.
I remember you doing that. Yeah, they're really great. So
Yeah.
that's one way that we can use that. Okay. Oh, Elise says we have a family member who keeps buying but washes and reuses their plastic film. It doesn't last, but we stopped letting him put food away. Reusing it is one way, I guess. It's just a bit flimsy. Okay, so I want to get you to guess again. There's a lot of this back and forth, but it's fun to guess, so I like it. This next question is still on the landfill waste. What do you think was the most common mixed material item in landfill waste that everyone threw away? And I should have mentioned this is across the 4 weeks. Mike says coffee cup. Take out packaging, yeah. Any other guesses? Wax line paper takeout. Yeah, that was one that I remember seeing and thinking about a lot. Chip bags, yeah. Also a very good guess. Although chips disaster might have affected it. Tea bag label string, that is a good guess. Q-tips. I didn't notice that one as well. These are all, I can tell you these were all in the top selection. I won't tell you what the top one is until we look at the slide.
You want me to go ahead, Hannah, or you want me to wait a little longer?
Go for it, because we've got lots more to guess. So
sorry for the hot corners, everyone.
Okay, so the top items in the mixed materials were actually contact lenses and contact lens cases. So for those of you who wear contact lenses, although that is a comparatively very light and small piece of waste, it was the most numerous in the mixed materials. Kim says she was using up a box of tea bags in the cupboard, but in future would not buy the kind that had the label on the string. Yeah, these tea bags came up a lot. So I think people, yeah, if you have the ones with this string and the label, you can't throw them away. You have to go in your land. You can't put them in your organics. You have to put them in your recycling. Some people also noted that they separated the two and threw the tea bag away and then threw the string in the other bin. So yeah. Anyway, so contact lenses were the top, and then general packaging, which people just put as mixed materials packaging. But one thing I did want to point out is the disposable PPE masks. I think this is something that, although we've done the audit we started doing the home waste audit at the start of the pandemic, but this is actually something that I don't think we've seen before, which is that the masks were really common in landfill waste. I think they've been one of the top items, but they haven't been quite as prominent as they were this round. There was 80 or so thrown away throughout the 4 weeks. And I do wonder whether this is because many of us are heading out now and going to work and using disposable masks and wearing them more often than we were when we were just staying at home. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on this, but that was my suspicion as to why we had so many. Okay, so now we can move on to the same for recycling waste. So again, these are the 6 different categories that we asked you to record, and you can see that the top item throughout the audit was paper in recycling waste. Olida, is that about the masks? You put a lot of masks in the landfill in 1 week. Sorry, I'm dipping back into my question now. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. The N95 masks are more popular now because people wear them when they're going into work, and that's probably why they were so common, because you throw them away after a couple of uses. Okay, flicking back to this now. So the top item was paper throughout the 4 weeks in recycling waste. We started at around 23 items per week on average, and it decreased to 18 items per week by week 4. And then below this, plastic was the oh, sorry, am I a bit slow? The plastic was the second most common item in recycling waste. So that was about half of that of the paper. On the lower end of the scale, we had all the other types of materials. Again, there was a few Tetra packs and things like that in the recycled items, but nowhere near as many as the paper. So we're not going to guess this time, but I would tell you the top items in the recycling waste. So out of the paper items, the top items were scrap paper, flyers, and cardboard food packaging, amongst other paper items. I do wonder whether some participants put flyers amongst their scrap paper category when they were noting down their waste, which could mean that combined that is a lot of flyers. But if anyone has any insight as to why there was so much scrap paper, I'd love to hear it, because it was over 160, I think nearly 100, yeah, 166 scrap paper pieces thrown away throughout the audit. And if we move on to the plastic in the recycling waste, the most common items were hard food containers and hard plastic packaging, followed by soft packaging, plastic bags. And a lot of these were grouped together. Most of the hard plastic packaging was from food. So it was interesting to see kind of a lot of tubs or pots or things like that food came in, and that was really, really common. And you can also see later down the list, there is broader food packaging as well. Plastic bags are one that I wanted to point out, because I think I saw this as one of the top items in the recycling waste, but also the landfill waste, which could mean that among the different participants, there might be different recycling guidelines. So in certain locations, you can recycle plastic bags, and in other locations, you're told to put them in landfill. And that might be the reason why we got them in both bins. Okay, so I could show you graphs all day, but I will stop there. But I'm going to pass it back over to Chelsea now to conclude, and then we'll have a little bit of time for some additional questions at the end, I think.
Thanks, Hannah. So we're getting pretty close to 8. We want to make sure we have time for Q&A. So just quickly, I'll go over a summary, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. And for people who want to stay on, we're happy to stay on and keep asking questions. We have a few more slides at the end that I'm actually going to skip, because I feel like the Q&A is more important. But if people stick around, all those slides are is to show you will get a certificate, and to remind you that we have more waste tips on our website. So in summary, everyone felt like they learned something new, which is really our main goal, which is wonderful. Our waste streams are diverse, even among neighboring cities. Learning the waste streams and reusing materials was simple. Buying products with less packaging is tough. And someone mentioned in the chat that we need help with that from industry, and I would agree. Overall, participants disagreed that both our landfill and recycling waste or decreased both our landfill and recycling waste throughout the 4-week audit. And the secret we'll share with you all, this is the first time I think we've clearly seen that. So you guys rocked. Congratulations. And if you want to read more about some people's experiences, you're more than welcome to go to our website and look at our blog. But I do really want to open it up for Q&A. So if anyone has questions, please type them in the chat or raise your hand. And while people might be raising hands or typing in the chat, Susan, were there any questions in the chat that popped up before now?
The chat has mostly been comments that we've been addressing. So yeah, it's clean slate.
Awesome. So if people do have Q&A about the data, about the process, about anything, please let us know. If not, I'm just going to keep clicking through some things. You are going to get an amazing certificate. And we also want to remind you to go anytime to our trash team tips. Any questions, or are you all just waste masters?
Or comments?
Yeah, or comments.
All graduated from Trash University now.
They have. But remember, you're not done. There will be a follow-up survey in 4 weeks, and that's for us to get an idea of whether any of the behaviors have stuck. Kim, I love that we're stealing Trash University forever. Okay, any questions? Going once. Going twice. Oh, these are comments, but I will, oh no, I see a question. And it is 8 p.m. So anyone that has to sign off, of course, you're more than welcome to sign off. Elise asked, does anyone have recommendations or resources for not bulk barn, bulk food stores? Have seen conflicting information about bulk barns process. Oh, interesting. Elise, do you live in Toronto?
Hi, is it okay if I speak on my mic?
Oh, please do.
Hi. I live in Collingwood, which I haven't really found anything other than bulk barn, because obviously a lot of grocery stores have gotten rid of like those sections of bulk food or reduced them because of the pandemic. But yeah, I guess just any information, or if anyone has any clarification on bulk barn, just because I've seen it online. Some people, I don't know if it depends on the location, but there's just been posts, and I think some like zero waste group chats and stuff, or pages online where people have seen bulk barn just like really heavily packaging, refilling bins. And it's more just like bulk barn's getting rid of the garbage and not you. And it's not necessarily greenwashing because they actually don't have any information on their website about it. Like I did some research, so I just wasn't sure if anyone maybe knows more about that or anything.
I really don't. You're making me curious, so I feel like I should look it up. I always wonder, we have some other stores in our neighborhood, and I've similarly watched the way they fill things. And while it's better than 8 bottles of ketchup, it might not be like it. I could do the same thing at Costco. So sometimes I always wonder, right? It's always this question of how do you do it? I don't have an answer for you, because I think in all the locations that these types of stores differ. But if anyone else has thoughts on that, from our team or not.
Add the thought that again, not a solution, more questions, but that's a really good thing for us to remember in all of this as you try to do sustainable swaps, is to do knowledge about what we're attributing waste wise, but also if before you do a swap, there's might be a bit of legwork to do to figure out what's happening, because there might be some, unfortunately, some steps we don't consider, but it's all part of the learning process. So I am now as well very curious about bulk stores, and we'll do a little bit of digging as well. So thanks for bringing that up, because that's also new for me to start thinking about. Yeah.
Mike says, I found that over 4 weeks, I was still paying for bad decisions purchased made in week 1. Yeah, sure, that's fair.
Yeah, I noticed that I think I noticed that in the data, and even though people were reducing the number of waste items they're throwing away, I think it takes longer to get rid of all the stuff you bought before you start the audit. So maybe, I think 4 weeks is enough for people to take part and keep tracking their waste. But I think hopefully the real change comes after this.
Definitely.
What is going on about potato chips in the microwaves? I've now seen 2 things in the chat about this, but I don't know.
Well, I think one of the participants said that apparently you can do potato chips in the microwave.
Oh, from potatoes.
Yes.
Hey, that's neat. I'd love to try that, but my partner broke our microwave.
Yeah, I do it in the oven, but never in a microwave. So if you know how to do it, let me know. If it works, let us know.
I'm intrigued, so I'm going to look it up. I'll let everyone know.
Awesome. Any other questions or comments?
Hello, this is Lisa, actually not Jane. I'm just like sitting right beside her. Just wanted to ask, it's more like out of curiosity. So everything that goes to the landfill, is it like a huge kind of like dump somewhere in Toronto, or it's getting kind of burned?
That's a good question. Yeah, so in the city of Toronto, everything goes to an engineered landfill. So if you're putting it in your black bin, it's going to an engineered landfill. If you're putting it in your green bin, it's in Toronto, it's going to a compost facility that is not an industrial composter, but I believe in Peel they do have that. And if it's recycling, it's going to the MRF. So here, I believe in Toronto, the only thing that is incinerated is hospital waste.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like stays in the landfill and that's it?
It gets buried and it stays there for a very long time. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, like are they burning it, or it just like stays on the like ground and that's it?
That
Just
Stay
stay
there.
there. Rafaela could probably talk about this more. She spent a lot of time in landfills, I think.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, here it stays there, and they have the treatment for the water that goes the black one, but it's stayed there for a long time.
Oh, that's disappointing, but good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, it's super sad. Yeah, but that's
Yeah, exactly. But thank you so much. Thanks.
And it takes up land, right? So even if we have an engineered landfill, yes, that's better than having a dump or putting it on the ground as litter. But eventually you can run out of landfill space. And the reality is, I think some of our waste in Ontario, we actually ship to the United States for their landfills because we have run out of the space we'd like to use as landfills in some areas. So it is always better to divert away from the landfill to recycling or the green bin or to no bin at all.
Yeah.
No bin at all being you're reusing, not throwing it on the ground. But yeah.
But if I'm not mistaken, like from US, a lot of landfill waste was actually going to China, and then China actually prohibited it. So I guess US also needs their own land to store their waste.
Yeah, that's correct. And I believe now with an update to the Basel Convention, that shipping of waste overseas should at least become more transparent and hopefully reduced. And there's a lot of countries trying to look inward for their waste management, but just because China said we're not taking any more, it didn't stop it from going other places. And so the shipping of waste is a big issue. And that means when Toronto or Ontario or Canada says, we recycle X amount, some of that includes the amount we send overseas where they tell us it's recycled, and that may or may not happen. So once it's shipped overseas, the fate of it is a little less out of our control for data. So it's something that they talk about a lot right now for international management.
Okay.
Great point.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and Elise mentions a really good documentary, The Story of Plastic, which I think goes into a bit about the shipping of waste, right, Elise?
Yeah, it talks a lot about that and like the market for incineration factories and stuff like that. And I mean, it just goes into the whole like production of plastic too, and all the health and community issues that come with plastic factories too. It's really, really interesting if you're looking to learn more about, where plastic goes and recycling and
Don't think I see any other questions or comments in the chat, and it is 8:08, but I just want to thank everybody for being here tonight, but also for participating in this. We ask a lot of you in the waste audit. It's one of our favorite events of the year, which means this is one of our favorite nights of the year. So thank you so much for being part of this. We will be back in touch with Survey 4. We will also have, eventually we'll put this into a report and you'll see it on our website and we'll send it to you. And also, of course, this webinar will be up on our YouTube channel. So you're more than welcome to take a look again at the data and share it with friends and family. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.